happens to a family when a loved one suffers a severe trauma, is diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, or is involved in a disaster such as Hurricane Katrina, but lacks means to get to the help they need? Ongoing treatment might not be available in their area and creates extreme hardships on families that have already been traumatized. How does a family deal with such a crisis without turning their lives totally upside down? Where do they turn for help? Welcome to PACE TV. I'm Ruth Birch. Today, Jim Weaver, the Executive Director of Angel Flight West, and Sherry Cimarusti, Director of Mission Operations, are with me. They're here to tell us about their wonderful organization that is able to help so many people in need. Thank you for joining us today. First, Jim, I'd like to begin by having you tell us how Angel Flight West got started.
Ruth, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. About 22 years ago, a handful of private pilots got together at the Santa Monica Airport and said, we have this passion for flying, and we know that there's this need out there for people who live in rural communities who have to travel to places like UCLA Medical Center, UC San Diego Hospital, and travel is a hardship for them. They're going for specialized medical care that's not available where they live, and they're having a tough time getting to places for chemotherapy or specialized clinical trials. And pilots then are doing what they love to do, fly, and they combine that with a desire to give back to their community. And Angel Flight West was born. The service was available in some other parts of the country, but this was a group of people uniquely situated to provide a unique service in Southern California.
Well, that's a wonderful story. How many years have you been involved with it, Jim?
This is my 14th year as the director of Angel Flight West. I came out of the nonprofit world, and I came with them at a time when they were looking for somebody to move the organization from its early embryonic stages to hopefully a growing organization, and it's been exciting to see how it's grown over the last 14 years.
Oh, I can see that. What other kinds of services does Angel Flight West provide?
Angel Flight provides services for children who have to go to special needs camps. We provide relief efforts such as Hurricane Katrina in recent months. We provide services for domestic violence relocation, which we'll probably have an opportunity to expand on in a little while. And so Angel Flight has a lot of very unique applications. We fly for various service dog organizations like Canine Companions, which has an office in San Diego County. We fly for guide dogs for the blind, transporting service animals when they need to be transported either to the people who are going to use them, or sometimes they have to go back to a facility for medical treatment of their own. So pilots have a unique opportunity to serve a wide range of audiences.
Oh, it sounds like it. Well, how do you determine eligibility then?
We have a mission operations staff, which Sherry directs, and she would probably be the best person to answer that question.
All right. Sherry?
Well, our mission operations staff consists of about 5 people. There's myself, my assistant, Mary Beth. We have 3 other people that work in operations, Erin, Amanda, and Gina. All of those people answer the phones on a regular basis, and when they get a phone call from a requester, be it a patient or a hospital facility, a doctor's office, they go through the screening process with them and explaining what our criteria are. The person needs to have a financial need or other compelling reason for needing the flight, such as living in a remote area where transportation isn't available, or those people that have bone marrow transplants cannot fly commercially because their immune system is compromised.
I see. Well, wonder if someone needed like monthly treatment ongoing for a year or more. Are you able to take care of that for them?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a number of patients that we fly even weekly. So if they're going to and from, especially in a clinical trial for chemotherapy, we can fly them weekly. And for any length of period, we have some patients we've been flying for 3 or 4 years.
That's just an amazing thing that you do. Jim, will you tell us about Angel Flight America?
Sure. We are Angel Flight West, and as Angel Flight West, we're one of 6 regions that make up Angel Flight America, along with another organization called Mercy Medical Airlift. And collectively, these 6 regional organizations and Mercy Medical Airlift service all 50 states. Each region has a specific geographical area that we serve. Collectively, this year, we will do probably 20,000 flights. And each region collaborates with the other in serving those 50 states. There's actually a piece of Angel Flight America called the National Patient Travel Center. And what that is, that's a funnel through which requests can be made that are longer distance missions. And the National Patient Travel Center has the ability to refer people to other organizations, sometimes to commercial carriers. Angel Flight America has a relationship with a number of commercial carriers who can handle flights that cover a longer range than what Angel Flight pilots are able to handle with their smaller private aircraft. Angel Flight America also allows us to speak with a louder voice nationally.
It sounds
so
like
we
it.
can collectively go to the aviation community. Instead of speaking with 6 voices, we speak with 1. We can go to people and organizations like the American Cancer Society. And instead of speaking with 6 or 7 voices, we speak with 1.
That brings up a good question. Then how would they find out about your services to begin with?
Angel Flight does a pretty aggressive bit of marketing to the healthcare and social services community. So we talk to hospitals, we talk to social service agencies, and we tell them about what Angel Flight provides. That there's this free service that they can access when they're in touch with families and individuals who have to travel for specialized health care that's not available where they live.
So they actually have a file, keep you on file, and
Well, many of us
recommend?
keep us right on file. We have brochures and videos that we provide for them. We'll send volunteers right into their staff meetings and provide them information about the services of Angel Flight. We'll provide them with our toll-free number, which, by the way, is 888-4-AN-ANGEL, or translate
easy
into
to remember.
888-426-2643, or they can go to our website, which is simply angelflightwest.org.
Well, what about fundraisers? How do you there must be, this is awfully expensive, all of the things that you do, and I understand that, you know, the pilots provide their planes, but there's still a lot of expenses running the staff, things that you and Sherry and the other people do. How is
Right.
that funded?
You know, we often get asked, well, if the pilots donate all the flights, what do you need money for?
Right.
And we say, well, we need money for 3 things. You know, to recruit our pilots, to build our volunteer pilot roster, to tell the Angel Flight story, to market the service, and then to put the flights together. Sherry's staff that puts all the flights together. So we raise money through a major golf tournament, which, by the way, takes place in San Diego County. We have a lot of individual contributors. We have a lot of corporate and foundation donors. And that processes are all handled by an administrative staff. Sherry has her mission operations staff, and then we have an administrative staff that includes myself, a business and finance manager, marketing manager, and a director of development.
Well, what keeps you so motivated to continue this work, Jim?
Well, I know that every day, you know, there are a number of people that are being transported by our Angel Flight pilots, you know, whose lives are being touched, and we know that our pilots are making a difference in these people's lives. So it's the ability to, day after day, to make a difference.
Right. Well, I'd like to come back and ask you a couple more questions, but first I'd like maybe Sherry to tell us a little more about her end of the operation as the Director of Mission Operations.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we do get the phone calls from patients or hospitals. When we do, if it's a patient, we refer them back to their hospital to make the request. We take all of our requests in from an agency, and that is just to have an objective third party verify that there's an appointment and that there is a financial need. Once that's done, the data is entered into our database, which is a web browsing database, and our pilots can then go online and remotely click on a mission and request that. That pops up on our computer screen, and we assign that mission to the pilot. And once the pilot has it, it is pretty much their responsibility to follow through with it. So from then on, the pilot communicates with the patient and completes the flight.
Do you have a follow-up and to make sure that the pilot and the patient have, done that?
We have a follow-up in that our pilots need to file what we call a mission report, and they go back online to do that. And that serves two purposes. It lets us know that the flight was completed. In addition, in that report, they put the time that they were flying, the length of the flight. And that allows us to produce a report at the end of the year that they can use for their tax purposes.
That's very, very interesting. It sounds like it runs very smoothly. I've heard nothing but good things about how well your operation is handled. Could we go back and could you tell us, like, maybe Jim first, something that stands out in your mind, like maybe something with one of the more recent rescue operations, like with Hurricane Katrina?
Yeah, Hurricane Katrina posed a significant both challenge and opportunity for Angel Flight all across the country to be involved, although it was our sister Angel Flight organizations in the south central part of the country and the southeastern part of the country that served people from the Gulf Coast area.
Well, then, Sherry, maybe from your end, how does that work do you have relay flights, or if it's somebody that's going beyond the areas that you service?
Yes, we did, particularly in Katrina, being on the West Coast here and, serving the western states. The flights that came out of the Louisiana and Mississippi area certainly were further than we normally do. But we linked with other organizations. So a pilot from Angel Flight South Central, perhaps, would pick up a flight in Louisiana and take it 300, 400, 500 miles, and then another pilot would meet them there. We do that also all the time throughout the year. So a patient that needs to go any length of time, our flights are no longer than 1,000 miles, although we did do some during Katrina that were longer.
Did. How many states does Angel Flight West cover?
Angel Flight West covers 13 states. If you took a line on the eastern borders of Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico, and go west and include Alaska and Hawaii, that's Angel Flight West service area.
Wow, that's a lot to cover, and this is covered out of your...
This is covered out of our Santa Monica office, which is where Angel Flight was born. We're right on the Santa Monica airport, and out of that office there, we have about 1,800 volunteer pilots scattered across those 13 states, along with a number of commercial carriers. They're the ones that are providing the flights that happen day after day after day.
God, that's incredible that you can keep track of all of that.
And this year we'll probably fly about between 4,000 and 5,000 flights.
Wow. Well, what other needs other than financial does Angel Flight West have?
Well, we always need to keep building our roster of volunteer pilots. So we try to get that word out into the aviation community and say, we need you to sign up and use your flying for something else other than just boring holes in the sky. We also need to tell the Angel Flight story, and we use a lot of volunteers that are not pilots. So we have a lot of what we would call Earth Angels. These are people who don't fly, but they're captivated by this magical blend of healthcare and aviation, and they like to volunteer to help us tell the story.
So do they also go along on some of the missions if you need an extra person on board?
That's a good question. We have what we call mission assistants. This is a person that would fly in the right seat, or could be in the rear of the aircraft. And their primary service is to be available to assist the patient and the family that's on board. That person could be a pilot or a non-pilot. So non-pilot volunteers can also serve as mission assistants.
Well, there's something else I meant to ask you, Sherry. What about ground arrangements, the transportation? Who makes sure that the patient, gets there on time and that the patient is picked up once they're taken to their destination?
For the most part, we do not provide any ground transportation, but we are slowly getting started a program that Jim mentioned, which is Earth Angels, and they do help with the ground transportation. But for the most part right now, the passengers, that's their responsibility. Depending on their financial situation, oftentimes the hospitals provide them with vouchers for taxi cabs, and some hospitals have vans. Otherwise, they're on their own.
Could you tell us about a particular flight mission that stands out in your mind?
Sure, there are probably hundreds of them over the last 8 years or so, but in particular, one is one that was a little bit unique. I got a phone call one day from a social worker at Stanford University up in the Bay Area. And she told me about a 42-year-old man, father of a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, who had a very aggressive form of cancer. And it was all confined mostly to his brain and skull area. He needed to get some chemotherapy. The call came in March, and since January, he had developed 7 new tumors in his brain. Oh. So he needed to get some chemotherapy and radiation, and they asked for daily flights from a little town called Pine Mountain at the base of the Sierras over to Stanford. And I explained to the social worker that this was not something that we could do, that would really deplete our resources. And she said she understood and didn't think so, but she wanted us to try anyway. So one of the things that we did, I went back to my email and I opened an email that came from the mom. And after reading the email and crying, I called the social worker back and said, let me see what we can do. I sent out an email to the Northern California pilots, and as soon as that email went out, within 3 hours, I had enough pilots to fly 5 days a week, up and back for 5 weeks.
That's such a moving story. Did I see an article in the paper about you helping with some military flights also?
Yes, you did. Shortly after the war broke out in Iraq, we were contacted by personnel at Camp Pendleton, and we spent quite a bit of time helping transport wounded Marines from their base in Pendleton back to their homes for their 30 days of convalescent leave. It was one of the more moving experiences I've ever had.
It's truly a unique and indispensable service that you provide through Angel Flight West. There's so many people out there coping with extremely difficult situations, and you make it so much more bearable.
You know, Ruth, I think it would be a good idea if we spent some time with one of our volunteer pilots, namely Dave Derby here in the San Diego area.
Well, thank you, Jim and Sherry. I think we would like to do that, so we'll get the information from you and contact Dave and see if we can go along on a flight mission.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much
for
being here today.
Today's an exciting day for us as we're about to embark on a flight mission with our pilot, Dave Derby. Before we leave, though, we'd like to take a few minutes to learn more about the pilots who do this amazing job and meet one of the volunteer assistants.
Hello, Dave. I understand you've been a pilot for Angel Flight West for 11 years. You and the other pilots perform an incredible service. Could you please tell us a little about that job as a pilot?
Well, yes, Ruth, except I couldn't exactly define it as a job because it's too much fun. But what I do get to do is transport patients for Angel Flight West who are in need of medical attention.
How many passengers does your plane hold, and what type of plane do you fly?
We're standing next to it. It's a Cessna 310. It's a light twin with 6 seats, carries baggage in the nose and 2 wing lockers. Typically, an Angel flight will be 2 people and a mission assistant, so plenty of room. Has to meet the standards that the FAA levies on any airworthy airplane. One of the things that makes Angel Flight work so well is that they ask the pilots to behave as FAA licensed pilots carrying a passenger of their choice. It happens that my choice is to carry an Angel Flight patient. But the insurance that I carry, if I were to put you in the airplane, is the same that I use for Angel Flight.
What special qualifications does a pilot need to fly for Angel Flight West, Dave?
Well, again, the qualifications are really established by the FAA. I happen to be a commercial pilot and a certified flight instructor, but that is not necessary to fly for Angel Flight. You simply need to be a licensed pilot who will have taken a check ride with an Angel Flight volunteer certified flight instructor so that Angel Flight knows that the pilots we're using are current and competent and proficient. There are no special requirements other than simply a pilot's license and a willingness to help.
Wow. And how do you find out about these missions?
There's a computer website that is Angel Flight's website that is wonderful. It literally lists the prospective missions for as much as 2 months in advance. So it lets you take the time that you have available to use it. There have been years where I have flown maybe 1 or 2 Angel Flights in the whole year because of my schedule. Other years I may have flown 6 or 8. There are literally hundreds of pilots in Angel Flight West doing this.
Dave, what's the procedure once you choose a mission?
We select the mission off the website, at which point we get a printout that gives us the name of the patient, weight, the amount of baggage they're carrying, the distance of the flight, and the contact information, usually a telephone number and today email. And it becomes the pilot's responsibility to coordinate with the patient at that point once the pilot has selected a mission.
So you don't have anything to do with worrying about how the patient gets to the airport? That's all up to them to take care of?
One of the reasons this works so well is that Angel Flight takes care of all the administrative issues, and the pilot's job is literally to pick up the passenger at an agreed upon meeting point, deliver the passenger or the patient to an agreed upon departure point, and we're through. We turn around, hop in the airplane, and go back home.
Well, what about your fuel and insurance? Who pays for that?
Well, I'm paying for insurance on the airplane anyway. One of the things about flying is that it needs to be done fairly regularly to maintain proficiency. So I'm going to turn avgas into noise somehow, and I might as well do it with a patient in here.
Now, if the patient, I'm assuming the patient needs to be ambulatory, but wonder if they need a wheelchair. Do you have room for that?
The airplane we're standing by would easily take a wheelchair. As it turns out, I haven't had a patient with a wheelchair. They are typically ambulatory, but we could certainly do so.
Who meets the patients once you reach your destination?
The patient and I agree on where the patient is to be delivered, and I rarely know. Typically, the ground transportation will have been arranged, presumably, again, by the Angel Flight office staff.
Okay.
The reason it is so much fun for a pilot to support this organization is that the home office runs so darn well.
Wow, so then your job is finished at this point?
My job is finished. I have to find my way back home to my airport.
Wow. Well, what happens with the return flight then? How is that
I think
handled?
Angel Flight recognized years ago that those of us who do this typically have time as a more precious commodity than fuel. And they break let's say there's a round trip mission from Bakersfield to UCLA Medical Center with 4 hours of treatment at UCLA Medical Center and a return trip. That will be listed as 2 separate missions, and typically 2 pilots will fly it.
I see. Well,
It's inefficient from the standpoint of how would you use the aviation, the airplanes. It's very efficient from the standpoint of the amount of time that the pilot spends on it.
That makes sense. Well, what happens if there's inclement weather or mechanical problems and you have a flight, that's scheduled to go? What happens for the patient that needs to get to that treatment?
What I certainly hope to do as a flight instructor is always emphasize safety, and yet human nature is such that that's a little different, and the highest levels are given to Angel Flight. They have a perfect safety record. And they recognize that there are times when weather or mechanical conditions keep an airplane from flying, and if it does, we cancel the flight. Once again, the Angel Flight staff, I believe, advises the patients, keeps them informed of what's happening.
So the patient then would need to have some kind of backup
They will need some other
means of getting to
Yes.
their treatment.
Yes.
That makes sense. What is it that drives you, Dave, and keeps you involved in Angel Flight West?
Flying is a passion of mine, and there's just no better way to engage in it. I get to give back. I get to stay current. I get to fly for fun and end up feeling good about it when I'm done. Gary, how are you?
How you doing?
I'd like you to meet Ruth. Ruth, this is Gary Gogol,
Ruth.
my friend and frequent mission assistant for
Hi,
Angel
Gary.
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. I understand that you've taken off from work to volunteer to help on this. That's an incredible thing for you to do. Could you tell us a little about what you do as a mission assistant?
Well, approximately 2 years ago, Dave was my flight instructor, taught me to fly, and he described the experiences as a pilot for Angel Flight, asked me if I wanted to come along, and I thought it would be rewarding for me as well.
Oh, that's really commendable. How much notice do you usually have, Gary, before you take a mission flight?
Advance notice ranges anywhere between a month to 2 weeks.
And what kind of responsibilities do you have on board the flight?
My responsibilities are basically just the care of the patients that are flying with us for that day, helping them with any needs that they may have during the course of the flight.
Well, Gary, can a family member act as an assistant on a flight?
Yes, a family member can come along with a patient. However, Angel Flight West prefers to have a mission assistant along.
Could you tell us about a memorable experience that you had on a particular flight with Dave?
Yes, I recall one in particular. We had a plane full of, I believe there were 4 children. They were all burn patients. And Dave and I were taking them up to Central California to a burn camp for a week. And that was quite interesting to have those people on board. They're great kids.
Oh,
great attitudes.
That must really get to your heart when you see that.
Yes,
that
it
they're
did. It
struggling.
felt very rewarding for me to be able to be a part of that.
Angel Flight has done that every year for, I think, almost as many years as I've been flying with them, if not more. It's a burn camp up in Yosemite, and the kids get to go, and everybody looks the same. Everybody has the same affliction. You can go swimming, and it's okay.
Oh,
It's just,
that's
they're really a bunch of
wonderful.
neat kids.
Is that a week camp or
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and a whole squadron of airplanes from Southern California takes them up and brings them back.
Oh, that's a wonderful thing. And it's really wonderful that you two can be a part of that. Gary, what would you say to someone that was contemplating volunteering as a mission assistant?
I would highly recommend it to anybody that wants to give back to an organization that likes to fly. It's extremely rewarding. I enjoy it very much.
Gary, how would someone go about finding out more information on Angel Flight West?
That's very easily found on the web at www.angelflight.org.
Thank you. I can tell this is a very rewarding job that the two of you perform. It's obvious that it comes from the heart. And thank you for inviting us to join you on the flight today.
You're very welcome.
You're welcome. It does, and we need to get ready to go.
Great. All right. I'm ready.
Let's go.
See if our patient's ready. Let's go.
The angels above us are a fantasy way up high, but the saints among us are visible to all. Some of these men and women are a part of Angel Flight West, helping, rescuing, transporting, and dedicating their time for the benefit of others.